Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the October IBA stage event with the presentation of Beaufort24, which is the 8th edition of the Beaufort Triennial. For those less familiar with the series, IBA Stage is a series of online events in which invited biennial have a chance to deliver a presentation of their most recent project. The series was developed very much as a response to the impossibility of traveling during the height of the COVID pandemic. But with the time passing, we decided to keep it as it was forming a very interesting and very important archive of biennials across the world, narrated by their maker. In this particular event, we have with us Els Wuyts, who is the curator of Beaufort24, which was titled Fabric of Life, and I'm sure we'll know more about the title and the whole edition and its experience in just a minute. So also with us, we have Filip Vervaet.
It's very good.
One of the artists that was presenting in this year's Triennial. Filip is a sculptor who has formed his own eclectic language that merges disparate materials and techniques, as well as abstract and figurative aspects. He frequently works with traditional materials, such as bronze and glass, and combines them with contemporary techniques, such as color filters and car paints. By leaving traces of craftsmanship, he fully embraces the manufacturing process of his creation. Also with us is Selva Aparicio. Selva is an interdisciplinary artist who creates works at the intersection of installations and sculptures revolving around memory, intimacy, and mourning. She was born and raised in the woods of the Serra de
Coicerola.
Okay. She was born and raised in the woods of the Serra de Coicerola Natural Park, where she was inspired by her childhood's natural environment, cycle of life, and changing seasons. She frequently uses organic materials such as cricket wings, oyster shells, human cadavers, and dandelion fluff balls. Her art is reminiscent of drawn-out ritual in which shifting emotions are reflected in the material she chooses. We're extremely happy to have you with us here at IBA Stage. We try to represent as many biennials and triennials as possible around the world. And it's an absolute pleasure to have the Beaufort Triennial with us for the first time. I will leave you the floor now to do your own presentation and make sure to be here at the very end for a Q&A to highlight some of the aspects of the description of the presentation. Thank you very much for being here, and the floor is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for the invitation, for being here. Welcome to everyone who will be listening to this talk, to this stage of this part of the Triennial at the Belgian coastline. So I am Els Wuyts, and I curated this edition of the Triennial, and maybe good to know in advance, it's the 8th exhibition. It started in 2003 with a museum director here in Ostende, Belgium, the Belgian coastline, West Flanders. And Willy van den Busse was the first director of a museum who invented also this idea to make a triennial every 3 years to bring art in public space at the Belgian coastline. So that's in fact the starting point of this triennial, which means that since 2003, every 3 years, there has been a new edition. Sometimes a curator did 1 or 2 or 3 editions. Sometimes there were more curators together. In 2009, for example, in 2012, there were Filip van den Bosse, the new director of the museum, and Jan Moejaert. And then in 2018 and 2021, we had the curator Heidi Ballet, who lives in Berlin and Brussels, who made both editions in 2018 and 2021, which were also the COVID edition, which was a very difficult way to be able to do it. But nevertheless, so it continued, it never changed a year, so it stayed every 3 years. And so for this year, 2024, I had the chance and the opportunity and the luck to be able to curate this show. As Beaufort, maybe it's good to know, Beaufort is a name. It comes from a guy, Francis Beaufort. And Francis Beaufort once thought about the idea, the way the wind is active at the seaside, but also on land, and so how much you feel the wind coming up. So one Beaufort is very weak, it's very slowly, it's very kind, you could say, and nevertheless the eight Beaufort is very stormy. It's more difficult to move and to walk around in at the coast or to go on a boat. It's sometimes a bit more difficult, but nevertheless he goes until 12 Beaufort, so that's a hurricane. I don't know if that would be a good idea for a triennial, but nevertheless, the 8th edition was a very kind one too, with Fabric of Life. I will share my screen now to show some of the ideas that I worked with. Okay, so Beaufort, and here you see it, 24, and it's a triennial by the sea. That's how we always also communicate about it, because the sea, the North Sea, is very close. It's very an important part of the show. And which is important to know is that Beaufort is really also an exhibition in public space. It means that there has been editions that there was also combined with a solo show, a group show in a museum or in an extra place. But the most important part of Beaufort is in public space, which means that it's really open 24/7. People can connect with this exhibition, with the artworks whenever they want. It's connected with the weather conditions too. So it's not unusual that I talk about these windy conditions, because the weather is really part of this exhibition and this triennial. There is no need for visitors or people that live around in the villages and the cities to book or to wait or to make reservations. So it's very, very open, and it's thought about a show with international artists of big quality, of a big international focus. So it's not meant to be part of a local event. It's really open to international context. For me, the show was thought about the idea of Fabric of Life. I had this idea, this title, from a poem of Kay Ryan, where she also connects with what could be a connection with a place, with people, with animals, with the natural environment. So in a way, I really wanted to think about the interconnectedness of many different things in communities. And as I am also based at this Belgian coastline, I had also the time to really connect with the different places. So Fabric of Life means for me this idea of natural connections, but in a way it's a very open invitation towards the artists to think about. So it's not really like a theme that is like a must, but it changed during the process, also during the moments we talked with the artists, we went on sites, we did the prospections and the connections on sites. So in a way, it's a very open idea. It's more like a common thread, you could say, some things that the patterns that are there and so on. So we really wanted to open up in this condition as a way that what is a place telling the people that live there or that people visit or pass by coincidence, and how can an artist with the teams that he or she is working with connect with it, and what can make this moment, this place, this space make a kind of different way of seeing, of believing in it or feeling it. And so it's a really interesting way of connect also with the senses. So it's not only the visual part, but you can feel that in every moment, in every place at this show, all senses are really like connected with what's going on. So as it is a really open triennial, it's also interesting to see that people with a background in artistic background can connect with it, but also very open to people that just live around the corner or people that pass by coincidentally. And as the triennial is at the Belgian coastline, it is a context of leisure and free time. You feel that many people go to the Belgian coastline with this idea of holiday, and they want to have an ice cream and they want to have fun. You know, it's really a way to leave a bit daily life behind. And also that's why this exhibition is also mostly in spring and summertime. Luckily, this show ends at the 3rd of November, which means that this moment, these autumn colors, this autumn lights is also part of this show. But nevertheless, this idea of leisure and free time is also really interesting to know that in a way people like bump on artworks that are there and they can relate to it, or the imagination can talk to them or not, in a way that is very open. And as it is the Belgian coastline, it means that the show is an exhibition of 68 kilometers long, which is a really interesting way of visiting, because every moment you want to go to a specific place, you are really in a total different atmosphere. And so this is a map of this Belgian coastline from the Panne until Knokke-Heist, but every community has its own atmosphere, has its own stories, legends, things that are happening, things that are changing, marketplaces that are in transition, domains of nature that nobody knows, but because people mostly come to the seaside for the sea and for the sand and the sun, if it's there. But nevertheless, also in all these communities, you have so much more to explore, and that's why really with this fabric of life idea wanted to connect with what's going on there, what's changing, and what is happening with the people on site too. So not only for tourists, but for everyone that could connect with it. So 68 kilometers long. Many people visit the Beaufort with the tram. There is like one tram that is connecting everything. So it's also like a fabric of life, you could say. It's really connecting all these communities together. And it's really easy to use it. You go hop on, hop off, you can walk around. Some people use the bikes. We are a country of bikers, so many people go with bike, and if the wind is not too hard, it's really, really, really nice to do. But also, by foot, some people did like day by day a way to visit all the artworks together. And as it is the 8th edition, and because it is in public space, it means also that there are in every community also some artworks left from the last edition. So which means that you can still also connect with artworks from the past exhibitions. And to show you some of the artworks, I will show them all because there are 18 new artworks, and in every community, in most of the communities, there is one that will stay permanently and one that is temporary, but with the option to keep it open for the future. And I'll start with the panne, and of course we will talk later with Filip Vervaet, and I'm very happy that we can also hear the voices from the artists in this talk, because I think it's really interesting for curators also to keep in changing concepts and ideas while talking with artists, because they are like the backbone of every interesting exhibition. And but Filip, maybe you want already describe already a little bit yourself about what we see here. Could you say something already about it?
Here I am. Yeah, I will give a description of what you see here. So the work I created for Beaufort has the title Staging Sea. And in fact, I made an artwork that is filling up the whole square. So it's not only one sculpture. There is a dune landscape. There are 7 lanterns. And then there is a pavilion with in the middle a fountain that follows the tides. So when it's low tide, the fountain is very low. And when it's high tide, it becomes more like an intense place, and the fountain rises up to 4.5 meters high.
Thank you. And in the panne is also shown a temporary piece of Maëlle Dufour. She made like this kind of sculpture with mirrors that is in the field, in an agricultural environment. So not really this idea of the Belgian Sea when you think about the sand and the beach, but really green area. And in a way, she thinks about all the things that are happening within the farmer community, the questions they have towards the future, about the scale of agriculture, what are we saving up for later and what's going on. But still, when you visit this sculpture, you also are reflected in a way as being part of these questions too about what we do with food and what we do with the landscape that is needed to apply to food and health questions. And in Kokzijde, now we go to the next community. There is a big sculpture, a monumental sculpture of Johan Kreten, who brought this figure, a feminine figure. She holds a herring in her hands towards her belly and her sex, and she looks to the sea. In a way, sometimes when the tides go up, the water comes towards her feet, and she, in a way, is present there. But she also talks about how many fish is there still in the seas to be able to feel this fertility of the seaside, but also of the human beings coming up for the future. So that's in a nutshell. It's like a mother, you could say, and in French, it's referred to la mère, la mère. It's in a way a word to think about. Jorge Macchi brought the keyboard. It's standing up, and so you can really see this these little blocks for the letters and the numbers, but in a way it talks about all the words in the world. Even without the letters and the numbers, we can really communicate with each other. You can look towards it, you can see the seaside, and on the other side, when you are at the beach, you can see the pattern of daily life passing by, people that pass by, the apartments that are there. So in a way, this grid connects in many ways to the rest of the world, but also to this typical apartments that are seen at the Belgian coastline. Selva, maybe you can say also something that about what we see here.
Yeah, so the sculpture is titled At Rest, and it's made in collaboration with the people in the town of Newport and people that was passing by as well. And we took molds of their hands imprints. And what you see here, it's a bag of corten steel, And the front is over 4,400 individual cast tiles in bronze. Each one is the hand of one of the people in Newport.
Thank you. We go on with this later on. And also in Newport, we see here 2 figurines of Alexandra Birken. It's called Top Down, Bottom Up, and it's connected with a monument that is always there since the World War as a museum, as a reference to remember the wars that were in Flanders very heavily present. But these 2 girls that are doing handstand, very playful, connected with this hard history, you could say. It's a bit that she plays also with what's going on here, and the green that is used of these 2 figurines is a specific hell green from Mercedes-Benz. So it has also something to do with what is a male connection, what is the female touch coming together on Westfront, which is a museum that you can visit right now. In Middelkerke, Lucie and Jorgi Horta brought a place where dialogue is really open. In a way, it's a sculpture that looks like a chapel, but it's an open chapel, a structure that you can enter, you can sit down, and the gazing bowl that is upwards connects everything that's going on. So it stands in the park. People walk around, take the time to talk with each other, and there is like a little figurine, a female person that is like protecting the area to connect everyone that's going on. Jeff Mayer brought this interesting sculpture, like a concrete building that you can enter. It's at the sand, and in a way it's a kind of reference, you could say, with what's going on nearby. A museum and a park called Raverside, where the bunkers of the Atlantic Wall are really close by. Nevertheless, that was not the specific inspiration for Jeff Mayer to make this concrete sculpture. It's more like this idea that when you enter, it's very narrow, but then when you come up in above, you really have this observation point, and everything opens up, and you can connect with surroundings. So this is also in Middelkerke. In Ostende, this sculpture is in the center of the city. It's one of the only sculptures that are really in the activities of a city. Ostende, you see Casino Cursaal. It's really near a lot of life that's going on there. But there is like a female body lying down on water. As you see, she's pregnant. It's a self-portrait of Femi Otten, an artist from Holland, who wanted to talk about motherhood also, as she was pregnant at the time that she thought about this sculpture. And it's made in marble, and it's like in a classical style, but very contemporary in the way that she, as a female artist, wanted to show this female body in a very natural and serene way, but with everything in it, the fact of being pregnant and what it means for humanity to be there and to be able to be there in full size. In Ostende, there is also this bigger sculpture in copper from Marius Ritziu, who thought about everything that connects with community, with communication, I mean. Copper is an instrument that is much used in communication, but for him it's like a meteorite that falls down like in a place, and no one knows what's going on here, but at the mercy of nature, what's going on. These copper plates are used in different stages of his art practice. So in a way, this is already the 10th version of something that's growing up, and every moment he changes the form of the meteorite whenever it's shown in another place or in another exhibition. So this is part 10, and connects really well with what's going on in this on this site, as as people pass by there, sit there, picnic around there. So there is something going on that we didn't expect, which is also interesting, that you never can predict what's going on when you see all these pieces. Sarah Bjarland from Finland brought this wonderful idea also of a monoblock chair that is really connected with holidays, leisure time, people in a pause that have time to relax. We see it everywhere in the world. It's a very democratic chair, very cheap, but also very annoying that there are so many of these chairs that are leftovers and people don't really take care of it, as it is in plastic mostly, very easy to throw away. And so she also wanted to think about this, how much are we going still to produce and are we showing, but on the other hand, it could also be a way to show that this chair can maybe be also a design chair maybe, but she brought it on a roundabout, and there are a lot of these chairs. They are not in plastic but in bronze, so they can stay there for a longer time, and so it's very nice to see how it works in this like a windy way of seeing it. Nearby in the Haanbandene, there are these two sculptures connected with a bench on a very peaceful place where Pees Wan Wang brought this sculpture she calls Al met ter tijd, a Dutch name to say in a way, take your time, use your time. You will see everything goes on with time. And she brought this intimate sculptures, a connection with Asian, Eastern figurines and motifs together with local histories, like a very interesting history of Monk de Vos, a legend, a very local legend that people from the neighborhood know very well. And so she brings the local and the international together. And on this bench, you can from far see also the sea and take some rest. In Blankenberge is mostly known as a city that is very festive, very lively. So many things are happening there. There are the most beach bars of the whole coastline also. So you feel it's a lot of noise around, music. But Blankenberge is also known for his history of Art Deco. And so that's why Romain Whitesem from France thought about these decorative lines of Art Deco, Art Nouveau, to bring this together. There is also a small Belle Époque museum in Blankenberge. So in a way, he brings up what's already there, but brings it in a different way. And people can sit on these benches. And as you see, it's not easy then to talk with each other. But for him, it's about how can you look at the rest of your of what you see. And so attentif ensemble is a word that is used in public transport in France to look around. It's mostly a safety thing. So it's like see it, say it, sort it, what we hear in London on the tube. But in a way, it's also very, in a way, decorative and functional. But on the other side, Romain really thinks about all these safety issues and security that are also here today an issue of our daily life. Driton Salmani from Kosovo brought these lost for words, 3 words that are spinning around very slowly in the wind, in the dunes between Blankenberge and De Brugge. In a way, he thought about after the moment that you have Blankenberge that is very vivid, and then you come in the dunes and you are like lost for words. You cannot find your words. You see, you can write in the sky. You can bring your own thoughts together. And for him, it was also about how international are we? We use the English language like we are doing today also, as it is not our first language. It's really a second or third language. And so sometimes we understand each other, but we still have to look for our words. So what can communication mean every day in our life, and how we connect with other people? Monika Sosnowska, we could bring this sculpture, this big sculpture facade. It's called. It's an interesting sculpture as it's a one-on-one copy of a window part of Foxtel Gallery Foundation in Warsaw that she copied and squeezed in a way that it really feels like this architecture that is not only to use or to be in, but also like the mental, the feelings that you have when you enter architectural context. And it's brought to a place that is not really known, and many people don't find it very easy, but it's a small park in Zeebrugge, and Zeebrugge is, the port of Zeebrugge is really big. You have the small village there, and so you have the port, you have the seaside, and so sometimes the people of this village feel also a bit squeezed and like not really heard or seen, but that makes it an interesting sculpture also on that way. And maybe when people listened to the IBA stage of the Triennial of Bruges, here we made this connection with our colleagues that are nearby to work on this together with Ivan Morrison on Star of the Sea, a place where people on the seaside can go in, can use, can play, can the dogs, the kids, everyone, the fish, the animals, everyone use it in a way that, and it's ever-changing sculpture with the sand, the water, and the sea, and the wind. And in Knokke, we are almost at the end of the 68 kilometers, so we can do the talk with Filip and Selva a bit further on their work. But in Knokke, Richard Deacon brought this sculpture, made it in a way especially for this park, because in Knokke Hees, they were, at the time we were thinking about before, the park was not yet finished yet. And so it was, we really had to think from the plans. And the park has a lot of walkways and tunnels, and so it's a bit rounding. So really interesting for the visual language of Richard Deacon, who thought also about these waves. But he called this sculpture News, Northeast, West, South. And as he said, he likes to play with words also. A park is a place where people come to talk, to share news, and sometimes change their point of view with the wind. So in a way, it could be like a beacon to come, a beacon to come closer, to find your way, an orientation point. But on the other side, you change your mind all the time. And then Lucy Lanzini brought this Troubled Sea. She connects in a way here the tradition of fishery with this rope you can see in bronze, and this frame that could be like a postcard. So in a way, the tourism and the fishery comes together there with this glass also. It's in a glass sculpture, bluish, where you can see that the glass is from, it's how do you say in English? It's hammered glass, so you can see a bit the waves, the movements of this glass in these colors. So when you go to see it, you have this trouble. It's a bit difficult to see it. So all in another kind of atmosphere, as you see. All the sculptures, all the installations have a total different place. So every time you come in a new environment, and it's really impressive to see that this idea we sometimes have of one place, that it is so interesting to see that there are many, many other ways to see it or to feel it or to smell it in another way. So that was a bit the overview. I wanted to show it because it shows also the context and the concept that is a bit theoretical, but it shows up, it opens up that it's more than a thread, a common thread. It's more like individual ways to see these places too. But I thought maybe it's interesting to focus right now on the two artists that are here with us. I'm very happy that they are part of this talk, as I said before. So maybe Filip, I wondered now that we could work together for the Staging Sea. In the beginning, indeed, it was like you changed the whole place. You made more than only bring a sculpture. No, you changed everything. How do you feel now that the nature is slowly taking being part of your installation?
Yeah, that's one of the ideas of the work also, that it's changeable, that it's not like a work that is constantly the same. So it functions completely different when the sun shines, or when it's high tide or low tide, or it also changes with the seasons. So it's really great to see the transformation. And also this idea of transformation itself is important for me. Maybe I have to go back to the first time that we visited the venue. So Els invited me to the Panne, to this specific location, a square in front of a church, and in a typical urban environment. So yeah, Els, she invited me to do a proposal for Beaufort. So I was thinking about the seaside already, but when I saw this venue, I didn't notice much of the seaside, because we were more like in an urban environment. And the place itself is also in transition. The church is becoming a library. So that's a quite important thing. And then maybe I just quickly describe the square before. It was just like a typical Belgian square in a smaller village or town. And what is typical about Belgian public space is that it evolves during the time by all kind of objects that are growing during during the time the square is there. So there are flower pots, strange sculpture-like forms that are not really sculptures. So it was really like, yeah, like a square that also wasn't really in use anymore. And as I wanted to get to know the history a little bit, or the context of the place. And so one of the first things I discovered is that, yeah, the church was really built for fishermen. So in the end of the 19th century, and it was constructed in the dunes. So when you see old pictures of the venue, you saw like a church standing more or less alone within a dune landscape. And now I was there like more than 100 years later, and there was like this urban situation suddenly. And as I'm really interested, my work starts quite often because of my interest in relationship between humans and nature. And also I'm quite fascinated in how we create or how we manipulate our environment and our natural environment. And I thought it might become a good idea, like to go back into the past. And one of my first ideas was to give, in fact, these dunes back to this place where they belong. So that was one of my first ideas, to recreate a dune landscape. And then I started to reflect more on what is this Belgian coast to me. And as Els also noticed it before, our Belgian coast is really like, yeah, how do I say it? Yeah, there's almost no nature anymore. It's one big facade of glass buildings. When we look at the sea, yeah, we still see some kind of nature, but there are no dunes anymore. There is like one big a deck. What is it in English?
Yeah, a dike. It's strange, but it's a dike. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so a dike where people are
promenade, or yeah,
promenade. And I took all these elements together, like these architectural elements, but also this aspect of nature, the working of light, which is very fascinating. at the seaside. And I brought all these elements together, and so I created some kind of monument for the sea, by adding this fountain to this dune landscape. This fountain, I already said so that it's moving together, and it's following the tides. So the whole construction, the whole pavilion or temple around is also built up by this functionality. So the difference between low tide and high tide at the Panne is more or less like 4 to 4.5 meters. And so I created some kind of glass architecture around this fountain, which protects the fountain against wind. And also there is like a bench integrated in the
Inside.
sculpture. Yeah. And then at a certain point, I was thinking, okay, in fact, I'm recreating a square, but transformed. So there is a pavilion, there is a landscape. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna add also 7 lanterns, and like that. There's again like like a square. And for me, it's also when I, for example, a solo exhibition in a gallery or in a cultural venue, then I always like to create scenographical circumstances. And I also see this installation as some kind of scenography where the visitors can walk around and sit down. And my dog is also joining me now. So yeah.
Yeah, and it became like in a way a meeting place. When you pass by, like coincidentally, you really see how people use really the space as a moment for, not only contemplation, but also to meet and to talk and to, to guess in a way what's going on here and what's this. So you really see that it's more. The people are more there than before. It's really interesting to see, indeed. But maybe in your research, you said also about the pictures we found about the church and the dunes, but also you thought about this, we found the painting of Paul Delvaux, one of the artists that was a century before really present in this region, landscape with lanterns. It has also this darkish, bluish bit atmosphere that you could refer to in a way, not one-on-one, but in a way you feel that people connect also with this, right?
Yeah, indeed. Also the work of Paul Delvaux also functions a bit more on the level of the unconsciousness. And that's also where my work is a bit belonging between day and night, there where things are transforming. And that's also a little bit how I see this installation functioning in this landscape. Also the title and referring to Staging Sea. In fact, I literally gave the sea like some kind of stage here where he performs. But yeah, also everything like the movement of the tides, it's like a mechanical, computerized, driven system. So all these things are also coming together here. Yeah.
And transformation is also something that comes back in the artist practice of Selva, in a way that you are really related to the changing seasons, but also how humans have passed from generation to generation. You came many times to Newport, Selva, and in fact, now we see the detail of what you described earlier with the lines and the hands. How did you... I felt this period in the beginning when we went to Newport and you connected the first time with people from there that couldn't speak Spanish or English sometimes, yes, but the elder people were not always easy to communicate, but on the other hand, really easy to communicate. How did you felt about that period?
I mean, I love that you pair us, Filip and myself, because I feel in a way like our works have a lot in common, but giving voice to, in this case, he's giving voice to nature, but in my case, I'm giving voice to the people of the town, which are living with a lot of commemorative monuments of war, which like a lot of the times is like, you know, soldiers on a horse, or it's really out of reach. And in this case, we really wanted to focus on the stories of the people themselves, like all of them. And when I went there to take the malls, I mean, I was really moved by everybody wanting to collaborate in this, something that they didn't know what it was going to be and how were these malls going to be used. And we really tried to get all ages of all stages of life. And but we did focus a lot on residency homes where we could find the elders, which have the most interesting wrinkles, of course. And but we also work in markets and civic centers, and yeah, so I was just moved by everybody, how much they wanted to participate, and they made the piece, you know, themselves, and made it richer by collaborating with it.
Mm-hmm.
And in relation to the transformation, I think the title was very important in this case, because it is a sort of monument to the people, but at rest. The piece has like 3 stages. Like if you come normally from the back of it and you encounter this curtain steel back, and then you go around it and you encounter all of the skins, all of the hands of the people, which, by the way, this is the scale of it, like it's life size. And then you look up close at all of these literal stories of everyone. And then the 3rd stage is when you sit down and look to the landscape, which is a very, very private, like very intimate space, which I was very glad that Els was very sensitive to my practice. And she encouraged me to look at this very intimate part, which it was not so much by the coast, but it was more directed to the locals in this case. So you are looking into this like very beautiful, very slow kind of lake with the front light of First World War right next to yourself. And at rest, like a lot of these people already actually passed away, and they are also at rest, you know. So it has become like, it was very moving visiting last time, because we did a little bit of an event to honor the elderly people who participated, and some people came from very far just because we took molds of themselves and their mother, for instance, or their father and themselves, and now they are both represented in this piece. And this piece, and one of them already passed away, so this piece has become also a commemoration from themselves, like almost like a landmark for them to think about their loved ones.
Mm-hmm. In a way, emotions are really also part of it. Huh? You can feel that.
Yeah.
It's you have the visual aspects, you can touch, you can contemplate indeed, but you can also really let your emotions in a way go. In a way, you were like a bit like a witness of this moment, that when people come back and see then the piece, how was it to be, because an artist mostly, you are not really present when other people come visit shows, but how did it resonate with you, this to be like a witness?
For me, that's when that happens, when I'm there and I'm literally seeing that, like it's making me want to cry right now, you know, like it's that's just, I mean, I don't make work thinking that that's the goal, but when that happens, I'm very moved myself, because I mean, for a work that can, you know, like the work creates a lot of a life of its own. And again, like I want to give credit to all of the people and the team here at Beaufort, and it's loaded with all of this energy and all of these stories, and I think people feel it, and I've seen many of them cry, and for me that was the ultimate success for sure. I was very pleased.
Yeah, thanks. We too. And with both of you, in a way, I remember indeed that we first, with both of you, were thinking about plans and drawings and little maquettes and renderings, you know, and it was not always easy for the people that are part of these communities to think how it will be and how we will see it. But I was also very happy that you were, both of you, very open to keep the dialogue open with everyone, because it was not always it's not always easy in this process. Maybe we can share also a bit about the difficulties of this process, because that could be also interesting maybe for other triennials and biennials to think about the difficulties. And I remember, Filip, I will start with you. The moment we visited your studio with some of the mayor and some people of the community to make it happen. And I remember the moment that someone said, oh, it will be that big, so that you think we are already like 2 years in talking about this, and how did you how did you feel during that moment that that people were a bit nervous, of course, but how did you
I also wanted to have this close contact with everybody who was involved in the process. So I invited the people of the Panne, the mayor, and the other political politicians. I invited them in my studio with a small dinner, and yeah. But at the other hand, I think okay. There are a lot of parties there who are involved. Yeah, Beaufort, Els, you're involved. The mayor is involved. The people of the Panne, but also construction companies, engineers, the architects of the church. So it's really like a complex dialogue. But I must say that I was really surprised. In fact, I was quite afraid of this process, because when I did before, like bigger shows, sometimes it's really super exhausting to get there what you have in mind. And I think here in this situation, there was like a lot of confidence between everybody. And I think it was really constructive. So I also think they had a strong belief in the project and also in Els. And yeah, I'm also not the first one who is placing a work in the Panne, because there are a lot of other editions. Yeah, I think for me, one of the most difficult things was to get everything within budget. That was for me the biggest, the hardest,
yeah, that's true.
the hardest part, because yeah, you have an idea, you have a budget, but then to getting this idea within the budget on that scale, it was really like it was super difficult. But finally, yeah, it worked out like that, and I think I learned a lot from this. It's also the biggest project in scale that I made until now. Yeah, I learned a lot of it. But in fact, I also like the whole the whole way towards the whole process with all the parties. And yeah, it's really from the people of the Panne, from the gardeners of the Panne who made the landscape, to constructors, steel welders. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, but indeed, yeah, the numbers are really all the time in your mind. And I remember, Selva, you had the same, to find a good place for the bronze, because we were thinking about many possibilities. Are we going to do it in Spain, in US? What does it mean in transport, or in Belgium? And maybe you can share also something about this part of the process, if it's still, if we are still in time. I keep talking and asking, but okay.
Yeah, the most challenging part was for sure stay within budget, because like as I said earlier, like each tile is individually cast, and that was very important for the project, that we don't make tiles out of small tiles. We wanted everybody to be represented individually, and of course, a lot of the foundries didn't even want to be involved in such a crazy process, because it's like over 4,400 tiles, again, that are individually cast. So either they were way out of budget, or they were not even answering the emails
Yeah.
until we found actually art casting in Belgium, which were amazing, and they did an incredible job, the team.
And also with you in the Koolhof Pub City, it's a domain of nature, so it's there is a lot of rules about height and weight and everything. So it's heritage, it's nature, so it's really a lot of to think about. I think also with your piece at Rest, I think the way we had to find a balance also in monumentality, that it still has this feeling of intimacy. So for your piece, that was also a bit looking how are we going to integrate this in this place, right?
Yeah.
It was a great conversation also between the three of you, and you could hear all the thoughts, but also all the questions, all the memories, and so on that come up after creating an exhibition like that. I've been myself in a situation. I know what it feels like, and I can feel that talking about all of these aspects is also part of a process of re-elaborating, of rethinking what it actually was about, what it was like, and so on. So it was great to hear you, first of all, give the presentation, but then also the dialogue was I think, a very compelling way of making us all understand what the experience was like. As always, while I listen to the presentations, I note down way too many questions for the time we have. But I'll try to keep it as brief as possible and try to do questions that hopefully speak to all of you, although probably in very different ways. And I want to start with something that was kind of part of this last part of your question. And you talked already about mostly the technical challenges and the production challenges of working in the public space. However, I want to stop a second and maybe also ask you, both curatorially, but even more so from an artistic perspective, what kind of different approach you have to have for a work that you know will live in a public space, will whether it's a permanent work or not. I don't know, actually. I didn't quite understand whether both of your work are permanent or not. They are.
Both.
Okay.
Yep.
So that even more so, that adds another layer of complexity. And I really mean not much about the technical. You've described quite well, at least some of the troubles that you have to go through to handle the budget and the technical aspects and the health and safety, I'm sure, and all of that. But more from an artistic perspective, like, what does it mean to sit down and say, I'm producing a work that will stay in public space, so it's visible to everyone. And you mentioned that being in a public space means that it will be appreciated and experienced by quote unquote art lovers and people that have a notion about contemporary art, and the general public, no, and people that are just strolling by or biking by or driving by or sitting in the shadows of one of the pieces, or just observing the tides and I think it's a very different, I feel at least that it's a very different process, and it would be great to hear you talk a little bit about this. If you want.
Yeah,
You want to
please.
go first, Filip?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a different approach in many ways, and yeah, in a way you also think of how will the audience, because now during the biennial it's most of the visitors are visitors who come specifically for the artworks, but afterwards it's just people who pass by, or the inhabitants of the panne who will have to live with it, if they appreciate it or not. In one way, I don't want to think too much about this within a process, but at the other hand, I am concerned about how people will use it. But this, in fact, you don't really have it completely in hand, because at a certain moment you place the work there, and I hope when the libraries one day is there, that people, after they get their book, that they come and have a seat around the fountain and enjoy the light which is changing by the sun and all these things. So I think the work itself, it will need some time also to be discovered. So I was also talking about this changeability with the seasons and everything, but I think the story of the work, it also has to be adapted by the inhabitants of the panne. And maybe also at this point, it's not already like a story within the panne. So also the times when I was there and I was talking with the people there, then suddenly when they hear my story, it opens their eyes and it opens their mind, and they look at a completely different way to the work. So I'm also at this moment we're also like having communication about, because this is maybe okay, the inhabitants of the panel were also like invited to the opening, but I also want to get in touch with them and to have like a talk later. We are now like more or less starting to organize this, as I think this is really, I really want that it becomes also one of these many stories of the panne itself, that this also becomes like a story. And another thing which I had in mind when I was having this idea of this work, when I was a child and when I went to the sea coast with my parents, there was always like some kind of landmark. It was a mill that was like 15 minutes from the sea coast. And for me as a child, it was like an announcement of the sea will be there. And then I knew, okay, we're almost there, and the tension was getting higher and higher. And so like with my work, what I also would like to approach is that for me, it's also like we are like 1 kilometer from the sea coast, but we're still in like an urban environment. And I also see this work like some kind of announcement of the sea. You're not there, but you're almost there. And I hope that one day that people get the story. And for example, when tourists with their kids are driving to the panne and they see the fountain and it's high, that they know, okay, it's high tide. We're almost there. So it's a bit ideas that play in mind when you're like dreaming of this sculpture, how it will function. But this we have to see within time. And then more from an artistic point of view, there I don't want to do too many toegevingen.
Compromises.
Compromises to the situation. There I really want to stick to, okay, this is the way I create art, and I work with light and reflection and natural element and architectural elements. So I think that's also like pretty important to stick to the work. And also I also think it's not bad to put something strange in the public environment. I also think it's a bit one of the main reasons of art in public space. It might be strange and people don't have to understand it completely. I think that's one of the purposes also of art, to put something strange within public space. And people have to adapt or they can become mad, or they can become happy, or they play in it, or they just walk behind it without watching. All these things are possible. So yeah, that's
And for
I
you,
don't
Selva?
know if it's maybe many answers on your question. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
I think it
got,
was a very
Good.
beautiful account. Yeah, I'll tell you more after hearing
Okay.
Selva's one.
Yeah, I think in both examples, on your piece and my piece, the architecture of whether it was going to be placed was very relevant to the work, and I think that helped to the thought of that being permanent. And it's definitely a big commitment, and you may want to place a foreign object in a public space and create some, like, shocking but I don't know. In my case, when Els invited me to the Triennial, I was already a foreign to the landscape, so it was important to come in person and to do all of these molds, and for me, it was important that these people will feel like they are part of the work and that this work belonged to them. Because the idea of something being permanent, like, it was scary in a way, and also against a lot of the materials I've used up to that point. So I took it very serious, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, as a curator, I was also it is very scary to do a show like that. I was a lot of times really afraid in a way, but also to try to protect, I don't know, like the artist. Yeah, you want to be between them in a way, to make the context as good as possible, but you can never things happen and people react and are mad or sad or angry or whatever, or very happy or excited, all kinds of things that happen. But as a curator, I was also interested in the time we live today, with everything that is digital, artificial, in a way far. We are all the time giving opinions and social issues and political issues, which are very, very, very important. I'm really assured of that. But in a way, I wanted to give an alternative towards all these things that are happening right now. So in a way, the imaginations and the proposals of the artists that are very genuine and very honest, I feel. So the confidence is from both sides. It's from all the sides, that you feel that this is what we need in a way today. Although it seems classic, you could say, installation, touchable, bronze, glass. It's really touchable, and in a way it's present there. But I feel that in a way it is also political, and it is also social, and it's also saying something about maybe even the coming weeks and days and months and years that are coming by. So it gives so many layers in daily life also to connect with, that the thought that the moment we are not there anymore as human beings, these stories will go on and will change in time. That's I agree with what both of you say, that we are half year later now, and people see different things, have other interpretations, or have and also the sculptures and the environment is changing. But it's still it is a really interesting thing we did. I feel like it's a kind of a responsibility, and sometimes we don't know how much we can hold on our shoulders. But on the other side, I feel that that it was really important that we did this in 2024 in this context, that we really can do this. And luckily there is here in Belgium the opportunity to do that, and thanks to the organization also and the budgets that and the communities that are very open to it. But I never lost this thought all the time, oh my God, what are we doing? Oh my God, what's going on? It's really heavy stuff, and I'm really grateful that everyone went on this trip together for this. Yeah. But still, sometimes you never know what happens.
I'm sure. Yeah. Looking at the time, I should stop. But I would really like to ask a question to at least one question to both of you as artists. Sorry, Els, I'm prioritizing.
I talked already too much.
Without them, it's difficult to have triennials and biennials.
That's true. That's the essence.
So I'll ask you the questions, and I'll try to cut it so that it all makes sense within a decent time, because we're already thinking an hour and a half. But let's forget that for a moment. And maybe I can start with you, Selva. And I have a number of questions. Some of them which would take us way too long to answer. That comes down to material choices and so on, because while reading the bio and looking into your work and so on, bronze definitely seems like an odd material, let's say, out of what you usually use. And yeah, if you want to get into that, of course, feel free. But what I wanted to focus more specifically is the process of gathering these molds. No? And you talked a little bit about it already, but I wanted to bring it like maybe half a step further, because in the conversation and in particular in the presentation of Els, there was a lot of references to communication, and I think we talked already, we kind of mentioned that as well, between yourself and the public, between yourself and the work, and so on and so on and so on. And I think there's two elements, let's say, of communication that come into the work, if I think about it, when in this process of gathering the molds. So the first one, of course, it's the obvious one. It's the communication that you have with the people that you're taking the mold from. But I think there is also a second communication that I read into it as soon as I heard a little bit more about the work, which is the communication that the skin itself as a membrane allows between the body and the outer world. No? And I think in that particular concept, let's say, of communication, of that idea of communication, I think your work seen through that lens, let's say, takes a particularly interesting light, let's say, especially if you use a material like bronze, which in a way is not really allowing for that communication. So you have to find other ways of mediating that. No? And I think that's also when you brought in that idea that the elderly members of the community had more beautiful molds or more beautiful folds, let's say, on their bodies and so on. I think that's also like part of that communication of the skin. No? It's a communication of time. It's a communication of history. And so, yeah. So I don't know if that second,
I mean, absolutely,
is something
for
that
me,
resonates. But
yeah, I mean, that's what I'm most interested about. I mean, I don't even speak the language. I mean, when we are talking about communication, everybody's thinking about talking, but I didn't talk to any of these people, none of them. I mean, and I took hundreds and hundreds of molds. But for me, the communication is through the main material of the piece is not bronze, it's humans. That was very important. And I do believe that through the skin, a whole story is told. And it is true, there is a transaction and there is a connection. It's very intimate. You are touching everybody, literally. And you can feel a lot of things. It's like, it is true that in the past, this piece was inspired by prior works that were made with actual human dead bodies. And in many ways, it was the same thing, because I obviously didn't talk to these human dead bodies. but I also didn't talk to these humans that were alive there, helping me produce these molds. So it was all about what you see through the material, what you see through these lines, what you feel in that moment of connecting through the material, which at the end is what we do, right? I mean, we are sculptors. We work with materials and their language. So yeah, that was. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was the main point for sure.
Nice. And maybe we can conclude with the last question to Filip, which in a way is also about communication. Now I realized while reading it again, or reading my notes rather than reading a question, which is not really. So I have to try to build my notes into a question. But so the one, I mean, you mentioned many elements, and I actually loved the accounts of you relating to a specific landmark to perceive the proximity of the sea, and of course to have the possibility of building something similar must, yeah, it's a very special occasion. I can understand that, and it's a very intimate way also of describing how you go about perceiving your work in the long term, and in public space in the long term, and how you imagine other people relating to that. But there is one other thing that I noticed, and that's where the element of communication comes in this sense as well, which is the relationship and the communication between machine and human, or rather machine and nature in your work. Because you mentioned that the fountain is controlled, let's say, through a computer system, let's say, to follow the tides. Yeah, I'm wondering if this is something that is, like, if this part of thinking about the work, of this element, is part of your practice in general, and if not, how you relate to it, no? How do you formulate a way of approaching this natural / machine-like communication, let's say, and how you deal with that? Because everything else that you mentioned is very much about the presence of the dunes within the picture of the church, the proximity of the sea. It's all very much related to natural elements, let's say, and to environmental elements, without the mediation, let's say, of the computer side, which then comes in a very strong way, I guess. So I'm wondering how you come to terms with that and how you deal with it.
So yeah, it's a bit typical for my work that it's it has many like layers that come together. But this this malleability of nature, it's an aspect that is always somewhere underlying in my work. For example, I have, for example, another work that comes quite close to this by ID, by combining this more technical aspect with this natural aspect. And these are some kind of wells I created, like some which were painted with car paint, and had like a very a feeling of endless depth, in fact. And these wells, let's say, they were also like vibrating. So it was like an the movement of tectonic plates. These movements, we transformed it to sound, and this sound again was reflecting in the surface of this construction. So also in other works, I sometimes use wind by ventilators, or I use water, which is oxidating material. So, and there's always like this this, yeah, also as a sculptor, you're like in a studio, you're like working with materials, but at the same time you want to make something that becomes like immaterial, or that becomes like an experience. So it's always involved in a particular way, yeah, within the process, but also within the result. I also work a lot with glass and with coated glass, and these coatings, they changes in color or in reflection depending on the position of the visitors. So all these aspects I'm using, like often technical. In fact, they're also they are like a part within my work, which is also like inhoudelijk. Els, help me with the English.
With the content, you mean?
Yeah,
Connected with the content.
Yeah, with the content. But at the same time, I want to create something immaterial. And I also quite often make like the comparison with, for example, at the church in front of the
work.
of my installation. What did the architectures want to do with this church? In fact, they wanted to create a certain experience by the visitors. So they created like a architecture with really high ceilings, with colored glass when the light shines in. So these are all like man-made constructions to then create like some kind of immaterial experience. And these are things I'm interested in also in creating my work. By in fact it's like a scenography, creating a scenography with materials and techniques and computers and all these kind of things, to then trying to recreate again like a natural feeling like we can have in, for example, nature, or when we are sailing or on a boat and watching the water. But yeah, all this comes from a reflection from the time we're living in. So in fact, we don't really have like, or I really feel the conflict with myself as like a piece of nature, and with this natural environment that isn't really there anymore. Even like in a nature park, you drive with your car to a natural park, and then you follow a path to then arrive at a viewpoint, and there you get then suddenly your natural experience. So this kind of constructions I'm trying to also show them I use them in my work, but they're also an element in which I show these constructions itself.
Sorry for the phone noise. Yeah, I mean, I think what you were describing is like, what you're doing is like a very honest representation of that. No? It's a very honest representation of our relation with nature, which is not a romanticized one, but of course there are different things interact.
Indeed, but and at the same time, it's an aspect within the work. You can I think like a common visitor who passes by the work probably won't read it completely like that, but for me it's a motivation also to create this kind of works, and to try to that people look at some kind of transformed reality, maybe to see this reality in a different way.
I want to thank you for participating, for taking your time, for giving us a bit of insight into your work, into what the process was like of setting up the biennial, or the triennial rather. And as you mentioned that it's on until November, of course it would be great if you have a chance, if you see this video before the end of the triennial, of course it would be great if you get also a chance of visiting. And yeah, I think I want to close by thanking you all for being here. And yeah, looking forward to the next projects, both individually and hopefully maybe even collectively.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's really interesting talking to you, and yeah, also Filip and Selva, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you as well, Christian, for having us on the stage. And